I have found over the years that when I am speaking to someone on certain topics, I'm waiting to see what direction they attack from. Not physically, of course, but verbally. In any discussion, you will hear arguments that are made to change your opinion, and that is how it should be. But I have noticed that often liberals, or those pushing a liberal agenda, sometimes in ignorance of that fact, will use two mutually exclusive arguments. A mutually exclusive argument is where more than one idea is being pushed, but if one of them is true, then it makes the other argument null and void. For example, I might argue that the moon is made of rock, or I may argue that the moon is made of cheese. The moon may, at least theoretically, be made of either rock or cheese, but it cannot be made of both. So when I argue that the moon is both made of rock and cheese, that is a mutually exclusive argument. One might be true, the other might be true, but they cannot both be true. But you will hear liberals and others on the broad left often argue their case with mutually exclusive arguments. Feminists will be heard to argue that there's no real difference between men and women. In other words, men and women are equal. But you are just as likely to hear them argue that men oppress women and women need to gain equality with men. These are mutually exclusive arguments. If men and women are equal, then it's impossible for men to oppress women, because such oppression would prove that men and women were not equal. If there is no difference between the sexes, then there's no such thing as women's rights or women's issue, because quite simply, apart from biology, there's no such thing as women, or men for that matter. It works in reverse as well. If men do oppress women, the women cannot be equal to men. It's that simple. Two completely contrary ideas being pushed to argue for the same cause. We hear it in arguments about global warming. The world is hotter than it was in the past, and then half a minute later, if we don't do something now, the world will get hotter. They are mutually exclusive. One may be true or the other may be true, but both cannot be true. We cannot be at war and going to be at war. We either are at war or we are not. We are either in the middle of an environmental catastrophe or we will be, but we cannot be in it now and about to be in it. The left liberals are very good at this mutually exclusive argument. They like to argue that we shouldn't be held back by old-fashioned, outdated ideas, and then to argue that there's nothing new about this. People have been doing this since Moses was a boy. If a couple aren't getting along, then they should divorce. Someone argues that marriage is sacred, and the left liberal argues back that you shouldn't be so old-fashioned. Then when someone argues that allowing anyone and everyone to divorce is a dangerous new idea, they argue that it's a very old idea. Henry VIII got divorced, you know. It's been going on for a long time. They also like the obscure exception. Having sex with children is wrong, most people would argue. But the left liberal will say, oh, but this obscure tribe has sex with their children and they've been around for thousands of years. Then that obscure exception is treated as if it's not an exception, as if it is the accepted norm. As the late Lawrence Oster wrote, Christians say the name of Christ, Muslims say in the name of Allah, liberals say studies have shown. When these studies are investigated, you find out the tribe consisted of 30 people who no one knows how long they have really existed as a people for, and it's nearly impossible to work out if the claim was true, embellished, or a lie. But these obscure exceptions are used just as the mutually exclusive argument is, not as a tool of logic, but as a tool of deception. When you find yourself having one of these discussions, remember to look out for the mutually exclusive argument. You might not win over the liberal, but you might get the person next to them to think, and that's a win.